The last Republican nominee, John McCain, he only released 2 years. The Romney campaign, if they wanted to, they could make that case. It's true. John McCain did only release 2 years of his tax returns when he ran for president. But here's the political problem for the Romney campaign on talking about John McCain in these terms. A, John McCain lost. B, John McCain was also the guy who had that problem of not being able to remember how many houses he had, which probably the Romney campaign doesn't want to remind anybody about. But more importantly, C, John McCain seriously considered Mitt Romney to be his vice president. And in that contest, in the last election, Mitt Romney was up against Sarah Palin for vice president. And Mitt Romney lost to Sarah Palin. John McCain denouncing today what he called a stupid question about that today, saying the reason he decided not to pick Mr. Romney for vice president after he vetted him for the job was because, quote, we thought Sarah Palin was the better candidate.
I've already put out 1 year of tax returns. We'll put out the next year of tax returns as soon as the accountants have that ready. And that's what we're going to put out. You know what? I put out as much as we're going to put out. People will have a couple of years in tax returns. That's plenty.
This is getting worse for Mitt Romney.
You should release the tax returns tomorrow. It's crazy. You've got to release 6, 8, 10 years of back tax returns. Take the hit for a day or two.
If something's going to come out, get it out in a hurry. I do not know why, given that Mr. Romney knew the day that McCain lost in 2008 that he was going to run for president again, that he didn't get all of this out and tidy up some of his offshore accounts and all the rest.
Tax returns. Should he release the tax returns? I would.
The fact is, there are a couple of years where he may not have paid any taxes at all. Maybe he's concerned about that. Maybe he's concerned about offshore accounts. But if it's going to come out, he needs to get them out now so he has a couple of months to explain them.
There's obviously something there, because if there was nothing there, he would say, have at it.
Put out as much information as you can. Even if you don't release 12 years worth of tax returns, at least 3, 4, 5.
Is I've released all of my tax returns, and I did it during the campaign. Went back a number of years and released my tax returns, and I released them every year after I filed them, right after I filed them to the public in New Jersey so they can see everything. And I think that's the right way to go, and that's what I would tell Governor Romney to do now.
And Mr. Romney is not getting any closer to answering these questions. In Mr. Romney's interview today with that conservative magazine, The National Review, this was his answer to why he hasn't gotten rid of his offshore account specifically. He says, quote, well, first of all of my investments are managed in a blind trust. By virtue of that, the decisions made by the trustee are the decisions that determine where the investments are. So the reason he keeps his money offshore is that it's all in a blind trust. It's totally out of his control and not his decision, which might pass for an answer if he wasn't this guy.
The blind trust is an age-old ruse, if you will, which is to say you can always tell the blind trust what it can and cannot do. You give a blind trust rules.
That was what Mr. Romney said about blind trusts when he was running for U.S. Senate against Ted Kennedy in Massachusetts. They're an age-old ruse. You give them rules. How about a no offshore accounts rule?